We are live and our cameras are recording. We're getting good at this, bro. Do the honors. Nice.
We are back. We're back.
We're back. Is your full name Timothy or is it just Tim?
No, people do ask me that quite a lot, but it's just Tim.
Just Tim.
Yep.
Tim, welcome back.
Welcome back, Mike.
Episode 4.
Or is it Michael?
It's Michael.
Oh, okay.
Unfamiliar Randomness, episode 4.
4 already.
Already.
Yeah, I think we got a little bit something to celebrate.
do.
Since we worked so hard and so long to get our podcast finally going,
Yes.
I thought it would be cool to get us some nice gifts. So I got this watch and the same for Michael as well.
Yeah, mine's here. I can quickly grab it without knocking the table.
As a memory
show
to
the
how we
viewers.
started off.
Yeah, yeah. Do we know the name brand of it? What's the brand called?
Podagar.
Pudagar.
I'm sure like by the time we get famous, these watches will be famous as well.
There we go.
And then they will have quadrupled in price.
Hopefully.
Whatever. But it's something to remember how we started humbly.
A really nice gesture. Thank you for that, Tim. I think it's a nice way of signaling the start of this project, something that we're both passionate about, something that we're both enjoying, or at least I'm enjoying, and I can tell from our conversation that you're also enjoying it, and something that we're both learning a lot from.
Definitely.
Keeping us engaged, keeping us thinking about different topics each week and how we'd want to bring them up in this sort of more formal setting. So, yeah.
For sure, yeah. So that's something to remember our humble beginnings by, I think. And also the fact that it will be your birthday soon and I will not be around, so...
Thank you very much. Early
As well.
birthday presents.
Yep.
Nice. Great. I
So-
think we jump into it.
Yeah. What do you want to start? What have you been up to in the past week?
So I've been running a lot. I'm currently training for marathons, so doing lots of running. And otherwise things are busy. The weather's finally changing here in Eindhoven. Don't know where all these people or one person is watching from. But here in Netherlands, the weather's getting a little bit better. Definitely putting people in better moods, which is quite nice. And yeah, I know that when we started chatting this afternoon when you arrived, we had some cool topics we were discussing because, we only really get to see each other once a week. It's on Wednesdays when we record.
Yep. It's basically, we see each other once a week. We always have the deepest conversations, and this is also what we are trying to record, right? So that's why
Yes.
we kind of have to hold ourselves before the recording, not to go through all the topics already.
Yes.
To have a real authentic conversation. But I think we touched upon a couple of things. So at least for me, one of the things that struck me in the past week, which started off a nice branch of the conversation, was I watched one of the latest episodes of the Diary of the CEO with Alex Hormozy.
Yeah.
And it was really about how to grow a business, how to basically make a $100,000 or $1 million business and these kind of things.
Yes.
And we talked about the topic before in the sense that what is actually driving you to do that kind of work?
Yes.
And in the end of the podcast, Alex Hormozy said that he just really, really loves working hard and working a lot. So that's his motivator as well. Like he doesn't need the money, he just wants to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And we started a conversation about that. And I think we have some common opinions, but also some
Different.
Different, yes.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting one. I realize we've spoken a little bit about maybe money or business in the past few episodes, but we haven't spoken much about, let's say, these influencers. So there's definitely like a crew of these entrepreneurs that are influencers online, and Alex Hormozy's one of them leading the charge. And some of them are very opinionated, as with Alex Hormozy. I don't know about you, but I found out about him actually more, I think, through the gym scene. Man's jacked, like he's a big boy. And he started his entrepreneurial fortune or business through starting gyms.
Yeah.
got quite an inspirational story, but he's quite an extreme person. He's all in, and he truly believes that everyone should start a business and be financially free, and all these buzzwords that all these people will use to try and sell you courses or whatever it may be. I do like him from the fact that he doesn't try and sell you stuff. All of his information is pretty much out there for free on YouTube, and he's got some very good mentalities, and there's definitely some of his mindsets that I have incorporated myself. I've been following him, or I've known of him for maybe a year and a half. I don't know when I first stumbled upon him, but he's got this idea of thinking about hard work as sort of a filter, in the sense that when you approach something in life that requires hard work to get through, it's essentially a filter between the people who are going to do it and the people who aren't. And he likes approaching these filters because it means that he can then work hard and separate himself from others, which in a certain mindset is not necessarily a bad thing. What we sort of started getting into was talking more about, and this is an ongoing thread that we've discussed for a long time, also off podcast a lot, is the motivation behind work, success, drive, ambition, creation. And I think it's one that we will talk about for a long time because it's very difficult and it's very complex.
And I think there are also so many aspects to it, indeed, that I think you make some very good points, which I think you are about to get to. And I think I do. Sometimes it's a bit like I'm doubting myself which one it is. So you also kind of play the devil's advocate in our conversations, just to learn more about what you might think or what I might think about it, right? So yeah, please go ahead and introduce your thoughts.
And before I introduce my thoughts, maybe it's worth mentioning that my own ideas regarding how much or hard one should work or how much one should create or be dedicated to certain things has also changed a lot in the past few months, years. I feel like I'm slowly in the points of my journey where I'm looking at things a little bit more holistically, trying to see a little bit more big picture, where perhaps in the past I had some more extreme views. But to jump straight into it, we can look at some case studies in the world. We can look at people like Alex Hormozi, Elon Musk, and even someone like Dario of the CEO, Stephen Bartlett, who are incredibly successful, and there's many incredibly successful people in this world. And in the past, I don't know if we've discussed it on podcast, possibly, but definitely off podcast, we've looked at this idea of people who are very successful, particularly financial
success,
running away from something in their past or chasing something that they can't seem to get. And I think the typical one is chasing this idea of, if I get this, I will be happy. So you work extremely hard to summit the mountain. You get to the top, you realize there's a higher peak. And so 100,000 turns into 1 million, turns into 10 million, 100 million, billion. And the next thing you have people who are billionaires who are chasing the money. So there's that part of it. And essentially what we started unpacking earlier this afternoon with this discussion was this idea of, it's something I'm very interested in, is, how is it possible for people to be successful, let's say financially successful, but not be running away from something or chasing something? And if so, how and to what degree? And where's that balance? And these are sort of some of the ideas we started discussing.
Yeah. And I think there are so many different motivations. And I think indeed it was very important also to note that we're talking about financial success in this case, because you could be financially successful but unhappy. Like you said, if you're running away from something, or if you are trying to get a lot of money or fame because you think then I will be worthy, kind of. So that's like the impure or impure motivations, let's say. But there are, of course, also pure motivations where you say, okay, actually, I just love to create stuff and be a positive force in the world. It gives me a good feeling, maybe because it's hard. And I also struggle a little bit with that, because I think it's a good thing if you say, okay, hard things, it's kind of a filter, and men were made, or humans were made to do hard stuff. But at the same time, you can also question, why does it have to be hard? Is that a way in which you think that I'm not worthy of good stuff unless I suffer for it? Am I not worthy to experience happiness if it comes for free, something like that. That could also be a thought there that might be underlying.
And that's a very interesting one. One of the things I said to you this afternoon was this idea of, well, why do we want to do anything at all from a creation standpoint? And I happen to look back at, let's say, the evolutionary thought process of saying, historically, what the human mind has done is create from the chaos. Take the chaos of the environment around us and turn it into order. We'll make tools and figure out how to purify water and all these sorts of things.
Yep.
And so it is definitely something inherent within us, right? And one of the things that I was thinking about was, looking at how do we find for the individual what the right balance between how much and how hard one should work is, and what we should put on other things. But with this idea of working hard, do we not deserve nice things unless we work hard, is a very interesting question, because in episode 2 or episode 3, we also discussed this idea of pain and dopamine. So the pain and pleasure in the brain, and how our brain is wired so that we only experience in the natural world dopamine or pleasure if we go through some sort of pain.
Yeah.
And so that is deeply wired within us. But is that right? I don't know.
Yeah, because there are so many different reasons for why someone can be motivated to do something. And it's also, you can go into the morals of it, but maybe it's also just whatever works for you works.
But challenge is definitely inherent for people. I mean, so we can talk about efficiency. That's definitely one of the things. So, of course, working extremely hard to move a sled that has square tires is not very smart, right? You want to be able to work efficiently. But part of being fulfilled in life, which we spoke about in previous episodes, is also having that challenge, that thing that you're pushing against, right?
Yeah, I agree. But at the same time, there has to be kind of purpose and meaning to it as well, which I think that might be the thing where you can question what is the purpose and meaning behind it. Because, for instance, you can take the example of a video game. And there's actually an example that Alex himself gave. So he says, like, you can see business as video games with different levels. So first, you start off, you suck. Then you learn how to beat the first boss. Then you beat the second boss. Then you third. But then if you would, like, let's say, stop and restart again, the first and second, you just run through because you've had that. So you become better at it. So he made the analogy to video games. But if you think about creating a $100 million business, or let's say you start with $1 million business, then it's 10,000, then it's 100 million. Okay, I can understand there are different bosses and challenges there, but that's like a never-ending game that you're just playing with no further purpose than making more money. So it's like people playing Candy Crush, just to get higher and higher score. But for which purpose? There is no purpose anymore. So why is getting more money, creating bigger businesses better than playing Candy Crush?
And I think that you've just unlocked a really interesting point, and we're really getting into the crux of it now. I like these moments in discussions, because we've done a lot of the exploring, and I feel like now we can get into some of the meaning. And in this case, it's understanding that why. So we're talking about people who are financially successful that are running away or chasing something. And by definition, if you're running away or chasing something to attain something, you're a bit lost. You don't have that why that grounds you. And the irony in all of this, one of the most difficult things to do in life is to find your why, right? And it's so much easier to put hard work into other things, working 16 hours a day, either at a company, starting your own business, whatever, art, creative, whatever you do, then to spend that time. It goes back to the very first episode, doing versus being, right? Like finding your mission statement, your why. And if you can solve that fundamental equation, it's sort of like Newton's laws of motion. Like if you can understand the fundamentals, the rest becomes a lot more easier. It has direction and meaning. Exactly.
Then it will kind of fall in its place. And I think that can be, I think like the view of seeing it as a game can then be like a means to get you through it and to get you there and to enjoy the process as well. But But I think you don't just want to play a game, just like you don't just want to play video games for the rest of your life. You want to have like a real purpose in mind. So I think, yeah.
But that purpose and that why naturally normally comes with age, maturity, and wisdom. I think if you look at a lot of these very successful tech entrepreneurs like Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg and what is the Twitter guy?
Bezos?
No, that was Amazon.
Twitter guy.
Doesn't matter. Jack Dorsey. So a lot of these, they're like Mark Zuckerberg's a good example. He was a youngster in, I think, a Harvard dorm when he created Facebook, right? And I mean, you can't expect any 22-year-old, obviously there are out there, but most 22-year-olds or even 28-year-olds or 30-something-year-olds to have their why completely figured out. We also discussed this idea of, at least I proposed this idea of something I've been thinking about myself is, I think it's very difficult to find true greatness in anything without a certain amount of pain. I feel like pain allows you that leverage that Alex Hormozy talks about in order to push yourself really hard and to do greatness. And then later on in life, when one reflects, you're able to, find more of the why. But I think that it would be more beneficial if instead of people putting so much effort into creating things and not necessarily knowing why, I myself, it would be more beneficial for all of us as a society if we all spent more time figuring out, like if at school, imagine in kindergarten, instead of everyone asking 7, 8-year-olds, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a fireman, an astronaut, a pilot, a doctor, a dentist, whatever. You ask, well, what is your why in life? But not to expect them to answer, but all kids start thinking about what they want to be when they grow up. But do kids start thinking, well, why do I want to be that?
Yeah.
Or, like really, it's just a thought that I had now.
That's very interesting indeed. Like if you would change the education towards more something that's actually designed to help you in your life, which is finding your purpose. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Also because you know that the basic school system is more about learning facts and remembering things, and only like at a later level it's about asking critical questions and developing really skills for life. Right, the beginning is very much basic and just remembering facts.
Yes.
That would be much better. I agree. I think that would be really nice.
I'm on my own journey of figuring out my why. I feel more recently, in the past few months, years, I've learned a huge amount about myself, about people, and it's not an easy journey to sort of figuring out this why, and you've got to dig deep. You've got to ask yourself difficult questions. You, I think, have also gone through your own journey. Maybe you have some insights or tips to our viewers on how one can figure this out.
Yes, dear viewers, I got it all figured out.
And subscribe to Tim's YouTube channel and you too can figure it out.
Exactly. For the small price of
one click of
$999. No. Just give me 5 minutes and I'll run you through the meaning of life. I think what definitely... There are two things, and I think it makes a lot of sense to look at the extremes. And I think the extremes would be, we talked about this as well, someone who is working his ass off, trying to accumulate as much wealth as possible, or XYZ, whatever you want. Fame, wealth, I don't know. Or you have the other side where you have the Buddha who sits under a tree and meditates until he finds enlightenment. I feel both lack a little bit something. I think because we are physical and social creatures, we have a certain desire for safety, financial safety, or these kind of things. So the physical needs, but also we want to provide that to our family or kin or society. We want to give something back. We want to create things. We want to explore the universe. Perhaps, at least that's like things that come up in my mind. So I think by sitting down and kind of meditating on it, on what is really important to you, you can come up with the things that drive you. And as far as I could do that, I think I have found that infinite financial riches is not the thing for me. I do want to make more than I am making right now, but I have like very concrete reasons why, and I also have like amount of money in my mind where I think like if I make this, at least I don't need to make more. I would rather start working less and spend my time otherwise.
Yes.
But of course that can also change over time.
Yes.
But I think just really sitting down and meditating on these questions, like what is really important for me?
Yes.
Or also maybe thinking about the questions, if I had infinite money, what would I be doing?
Exactly.
Right. And what would come up for you if you would ask yourself these questions?
It's something that's a mindset shift or transition that I've recently gone through. And I would say even this time last year, I was perhaps more fixated on the idea of career progression, but for the sake of being able to earn more. And I think we'd maybe discussed this in previous episodes where, we did definitely, where money is an easy metric for people to distill
Added value
or position, and so some sort of hierarchy, whatever. And as I'm sort of going on this journey more, I realize how much of a distraction it can also be. I think it's the same as our smartphone, that can be such a powerful tool, but also such a powerful distraction. And so to use the money that one has as a tool is extremely powerful, just like our smartphone. Like we are using our smartphones right now to record this episode. It's a very useful reason. But we could also use this time right now to sit and scroll through Instagram for an hour on Reels.
That sounds amazing.
That's the dopamine side of your brain. Like
I didn't know that was possible.
And that's the same thing with money, right? So I mean, you could make a lot of money, and then you could decide to start a business or to create value or build something or donate it or whatever it may be, or you could use it for impure reasons, to gamble it all away or to do whatever,
Might I make a small side note? Because I just found the example too compelling not to mention. We talked offline also before about these you can call them like spirits or demons or angels, whatever, like basically systems that by themselves are bigger than an individual. They exist, they're kind of abstract. And maybe when I give the example, it will be more concrete. If you take money, money has a certain attraction and a mechanism inside of itself that keeps people engaged.
Yes.
So the question is, are you using the money, or is the money using you? Like, are you in this perpetual cycle of money? Like you want more, or are you using the money to get the things that you actually want for a higher purpose?
Yes.
So
exactly. There's a line in one of Macklemore's songs where he says, "Make the money, don't let the money make you." And I think he's referring more to the celebrities, but we're really getting to the essence of it, Chan. That's what I love, because it's really a fundamental mentality shift that I've, particularly these last few weeks, actually, when we've been doing this podcast, I've been thinking a lot because of this podcast. And you get to a point where you realize, like you and I, for example, we live really great lives. Like, if we want some sort of food, we can go to the supermarket, we can buy it. We have a roof over our head, we have heating, we have transport, we have all the things that we need in our lives, and almost all of our wants. If we want to buy a new shirt or whatever, we can afford stuff. And so one of the things that happens is that when you start increasing money at a certain point, it doesn't scale linearly anymore. So whether you're making 100,000 a year or 150 or 200,000, it doesn't make as much of a difference whether you're earning 20,000 or 50,000. That's a big difference per year compared to 150 to 200,000. Yeah, maybe your house is a little bit bigger, or your car's a little bit nicer, but as you keep on going up and up and up, obviously in the extremes, like billionaires, they got private jets and all that sort of stuff, but it doesn't scale linearly. So that's the first thing. So it's like an addiction, or people who are addicted to drugs, like these people who chase money, they need huge amounts more of it to see a noticeable difference in their life. But also what I'm realizing now is how valuable peace is. And I feel like once you get a taste of that, it becomes a lot easier to forget or to get out of that cycle of that money making you, and you know what I mean? Because it's completely removed from money. And that's like this whole hippie idea. You know, you think of a typical hippie person out in the middle of a field on a sunny day, just breathing in air and whatever. But really, I mean, like having peace with your own demons and your dreams and ambitions and knowing your why is so much more valuable
For
than
sure.
so much money. And another thing, a point I'd like to make right now is, and this I really want to link below in this episode, was a podcast episode that Stephen Bartlett did with Jimmy Carr, the very, what's the right word?
Comedian?
Yeah, funny comedian, but he's a very vulgar, funny, but a funny guy. But some of the most profound words that I've heard in a very long time came from him, which I would not have expected. And he talks about, and maybe our viewers would have already seen it, it's all over Instagram Reels and stuff, at least my Instagram Reels, because I'm into self-development stuff. But he talks about how every single one of us would give all the money that we have in the future, everything that we have in the future, to be as healthy as we are right now. And that is so true. That is so true. Like, no matter how much we have in 15 years' time or 10 years, 20 years' time, we'd give it all up to have just our health, what we have now.
Yeah.
And that really puts everything into perspective.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. But then at the same time, it's also a journey. I think it's a very powerful statement by him, but I would also question, like, if you live your life truthfully and in line with your goal, I think you can also be in a situation where even at an older age, you don't necessarily need to make the trade because you are also very content with where you're at that moment. So, and I think that's where you're trying to.
But
to
I think,
be.
the point that he's trying to make is that our well-being is far more valuable.
Yes,
than the things. And
don't sacrifice your well-being
right
for
now.
money.
Yeah, right now, like most of us, we're quite attached to our personal belongings, our materialistic things in the world. But if push came to shove, we would of course choose our physical selves over but we live in a world where they've become so integrated and they've overlaid so much. Like for most people, if we leave our smartphone in another room for 10 minutes, we feel disconnected from the world, right?
Yeah.
And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because I think that we can link that same thing to like finding one's peace.
Yeah.
And the more I've learned about this, the more confused I've become as to why we aren't taught this at a younger age, and basic stuff like.
I think a lot of people don't realize it also. I think that is like, and it's so tempting to go back, even if once you realize it, to go back into that rat race. And just to make it clear, if you are on the more struggling side financially, I do understand that there's a need for you to like work hard and make enough money so you can get around. But this is not the state that we're in.
Yes.
Like you said, we have all our needs met plus a little bit more.
Yes.
So I think for me, if I project into the future, why I would like to make more money is for my wife to be able to stop working if she would like to, and to accommodate for inflation and potential future risks that are unpredictable, that we can still have a comfortable and good life with kids.
So that's security. I think
Security, yeah. But then beyond that, there's a point where you can say that beyond that point, there's no need to have any additional money.
Yes. And I think that idea of security links to a very fundamental human desire. So if we go all the way back, if a terrible storm were to hit a village or something, you'd want to have enough resources so that everyone could survive through the treacherous times. And that storm can be a metaphorical storm or a literal storm.
Yep.
The metaphorical storm can be a mental illness that takes over someone in a family or in a society or whatever, and they
epidemics.
And people aren't able to be breadwinners or whatever anymore. And I think it's also very easy for us to, because we have that knee-jerk not insecurity, defense mechanism within our subconscious to, when we feel like maybe we want to take a step back and find some more peace and evaluate things, it's easy to think to oneself, oh, well, what if something terrible happens? And then ignite that fight or flight mechanism within us and just go, right? So, say you're earning X amount, you're comfortable, whatever, and maybe you don't need more money, but then that there's an insecurity within you. There's something that's making you scared. Like, what if something were to happen in the world? And so I want to be more secure so that I can live through an even bigger disaster that may come. Right? Are you getting what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like this loop. And at a certain point, you need to...
It never stops.
Yeah, at a certain point, you need to do like what we do in our jobs, risk management. You need to say, okay, well, what is the likelihood of this? What is the impact? And for me, what is the threshold that I'm willing to stay within or without, should I say? And then at a certain point, really like focus on like that letting go.
Yeah, and that's very interesting because that's actually also something Alex Hormozy said, that it's maybe about the standard of living that you think that you need to have. So like you said, if you're willing to sleep on the floor, you'll create a kind of situation where you probably never have to. He said that because you kind of live with lower costs and therefore you save more and more money. But like that's an interesting point as well, that we have this idea that we get used to the standard that we live at, and then we are afraid of losing it, but we forgot that at some point we were completely happy with way less.
Yes.
And I think that is also part of that perpetual cycle of always wanting more and more and more.
And also, I think to a certain degree, it's also having faith in like one's abilities and like the society and the systems that we live in. So, if you or I were to lose our jobs, we're competent people. Like we could go somewhere else and find work, at another company or in another place even.
Yeah.
And I think for many people, they might not mentally be as secure in that. Or maybe the skills that they've developed are very specific to a place or a company. And so it differs for a lot of people. But that point that you're making of realizing that we become very accustomed to the things that we like, and some of it can be like really small stuff, like the filter on your tap, the water filter on your tap. Like if you were to do without it, it's not going to impact your happiness that much.
No, yeah.
Or buying some brand of sparkling water versus normal water or whatever. Like there's a lot of things that we become accustomed to, but if we lose it, in reality, it shouldn't impact our happiness that much. And if it does, then maybe it means that we're not as at peace as what we could be.
Yep. And maybe it's interesting now at this point, because I think we agree on this side of the story, more or less, to flip it around, to see like there is one motivation to work hard and do a lot, which is money. But let's say if we take money out and say it's just the need and desire to create solutions and value for yourself, for society, for the world, then you could say this whole reasoning is just our rationality, laziness, trying to prevent you from achieving the best that you could. So, okay, if that is the motivation, for instance, you could give all the money away. You could just make 100 million in value that you create and give it all away. Or I don't know, should you even give it away? Or is it also okay if you just want to create additional value and you happen to become rich because of it? So that can also be a motivation, right? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's something I wanted to mention earlier, where there's a difference between, let's say, chasing financial freedom or success and attracting it. And I think that you often find two kinds of people who have achieved a lot of financial wealth, people who have chased it, like fought for it, like tooth and nail. And you can often see immediately, like particularly like say like a typical stereotype of a very high level businessman who's ruthless, right? And you know, you get into a meeting and you can tell, you know, from the first sentence this person says, they're like at the world. It reminds me of the Jordan Peterson, the mouse does. But
maybe we can cut that in here.
Maybe. But you also like get people who are just like brilliant. They're calm, they're at peace, they get it, they understand sort of big picture. They're like, you can see they know things that you maybe don't really know, and they're playing the game at a completely different level. And like because of it, like regardless of whether things maybe work in their favor in the short term or not, in the long term, they always end up attracting success, and people are drawn to them and want to sort of pool their resources around them. And like that's really interesting to me. Those are the sorts of people that really interest me, and that I look at and I'm like, okay, like what have you figured out? Like how did you sort of get here?
So then it comes more in a natural way and a less planned steps to make
But I
X
feel like
amount.
those are the kinds of people who also happen to probably care less about the money, and on the long term probably end up having more of it or more, you know, like the abundance comes to the people who aren't obsessed over it.
I think that's 100% true. I think that there's something about attracting rather than chasing it. But and I do like this way of phrasing it, because there is a parallel which I talked about recently with a friend of mine about dating, which is something
I was about to say within relationships,
because that's something that you probably also know a thing or two about. But there is a way when you start dating where you want to show your true self and drop the mask. At the same time, if you would not play the game or dance the dance, it's also a bit lazy. So you're not even putting in the effort to learn the moves and to play the game. You're saying, no, you should love me because of who I am. Whereas in the end, you do want the person to love you for who you are, but you also want to put in the effort and play the game and dance the dance.
Yes.
Isn't that maybe also a little bit of that human experience that you do want to not overdo it and randomly get trapped in an infinite loop of chasing money, but you also want to kind of play the game a little bit, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, the analogy that that's a very interesting point you brought up. The analogy I was thinking about was the idea, let's talk about like security within a relationship. If you have two people that are in a relationship who are both completely obsessed about like, am I secure, or how secure is this relationship? Then if both people are completely obsessed over it, the relationship's probably not that secure. Where if both people are completely focused on putting effort into having a healthy relationship, the security is a byproduct, a healthy byproduct of the higher order idea. And I think it's the same with these people. So it's not that they're like completely lazy and they just attract like this. They're putting in effort, but the effort that they're putting in is they're not worrying about, is the number in the bank account going up? Like you're not worrying about, is your security in your relationship increasing, when you're just focusing on being in a healthy relationship. So I think it's sort of akin to that. So they're focused on whatever their why is. We go back to whatever that why is for them.
Yeah. So you actually basically are trying to find what is your why, and then solving problems in order to get to that why. And if you add value in the process and you do it truthfully, you will get more and more. That's basically, I think also that's a pretty religious
Truthfully is an interesting point there, because being honest to yourself is also one of the most difficult parts in that equation.
Sometimes you also don't really know what you really want.
Yes.
And like I said, there are many different motivations why you might do something, to run away for something because you find distraction in it. So it's hard to find that out. But I think that's the journey of life also. So it's not like necessarily there's a right or wrong. Sometimes you have to go through the motions of doing it right for a couple of years before you find out that, or if you're doing it wrong for a couple of years before you find out that it's not the right thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Another thing I want to mention here quickly is a few ideas. The first, the idea of gratitude, the idea of perspective, and linking back to the idea of, how much do we need to sort of be happy. And what I want to link back to here is a bit of my background, so people who don't know, like, I'm from South Africa, and South Africa has a lot of poverty. And what I've noticed when I came here, and also when I go back to South Africa, is how happy so many people are, like truly bubbly, happy people there are that have such little. And it's incredible, because I think also, like, in this podcast, we're obviously talking about the idea of money, but I think it's very important to be grateful in your own life for whatever position you're in, and also realize that a lot of these topics that we're discussing here, you need to be at a certain point of emotional and physical security to start considering these high level things. Like, if you really don't have running water, electricity, these basic fundamentals, humans, which so many people in this world don't have. Yes, we, as a global society, we've managed to pull billions of people out of poverty in the past, I don't know how many decades, but I think between China and India, they've pulled
Quite a
huge
lot.
amount of people out. I think Africa is one of the continents that's still lagging behind. And I think it's the discussion that we're having today is one of these discussions that's happening on a huge scale within continents like Africa. And you're like, well, how can people find peace, be fulfilled, and sort of focus on these higher level tasks, even if they aren't as fortunate as what we are? And that's where the perspective comes in. I can promise you right now that there are hundreds of thousands of people in South Africa, at least, because that's the country that I'm from, that are way happier than so many people here in Eindhoven in the Netherlands that have so much more than what they have. But these people have manufactured problems in their mind that they deserve a promotion, they want a better car, or they whatever their house, or like,
why is that, you think? Like, what is it? Why is having more or a higher standard of living or more stuff is not making you happy?
I think greed, and I think that if we want to maybe get like deep with it,
You mean like the more you have, the greedier you become?
I think it's the thought that's coming to my mind is the saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I think it's the devil luring people with things, and with things you lose sight of your why, of the vision, of your peace, of you slip up. You know what I mean? And I think for a lot of these people that I'm talking about in Southern Africa, they don't have that temptation. And I mean, maybe some of them, they don't even have enough money to become an alcoholic or something like that. You get what I'm trying to say? It's a bad example, or maybe not the best example, but like, from a material standpoint, from like wanting more things, you get people who want Gucci handbags.
You can buy more.
Like they don't have that. So that was never really a thing for them. And they've, grown up in a place where then they focus more on being connected to just their community and the people around them and stuff.
I just wonder, can it also, I really like the way you take the example of South Africa and compare it to people in Eindhoven. I know for sure a couple of people amongst which my wife will just say it's probably because of the bad weather here. But no, I definitely like that. I'm just thinking about, is there also a correlation between the kind of work that we do here or the kind of work that you do in the West or in this society that we live in, where it's more abstracted and perhaps you feel like you have more responsibility. I don't know if you really have, but a perceived higher responsibility, therefore more stress in your work compared to maybe a bit more physical, outdoorsy work.
I think we're getting into some important topics here.
It might be a little bit different, a tangent, but I think that also plays.
It's true. I think that what we've done in modern society, I think capitalism, and it's a very apparent in like America, where we remove ourselves from nature, we disconnect ourselves by being overly connected through technology, social media, but we're less physically connected to people around us, people who care. We're less in the physical environment that we were designed to be. And then we're tempted by all these things that manipulate our brain chemistry, particularly things like dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin and whatever. And so as I continue, like I'm sure there's more things, but off the top of my head, I can't. But cars and whatever. But we end up then creating this artificial playground. You've heard of those those experiments with rats in cages, and they feed them. We essentially become a rat in a cage.
Yep.
That's an urban cage of concrete and dopamine and this and that and that. And like we forget the basics. Like learn how to breathe. Like go into nature. Like feel grass on your feet. Like do exercise.
Yeah.
Eat vegetables and like healthy things.
I'm not looking forward at all to the virtual reality timeline, which we will see very soon, I think.
Yeah.
So like that's something we will probably experience.
Yeah.
And that's going to be awful.
Yeah.
I think like that's. I think everyone has seen The Matrix, right? Where basically people are just plugged into a computer, and then they just stay in their coffins. Basically,
Yeah.
I see that's a potential outcome as well.
Yeah, with this Neuralink and all these things. And I watched something today that was talking about how, one of the main purposes of life is to connect with other people around, to care and to love others around you. And really, if you focus on that, I think it's difficult to be unfulfilled and to be very unhappy and to focus on the wrong things.
Yeah. And there's maybe also one thing that I forgot to bring up earlier, but it just came to my mind again. Another reason why people might feel like they want to make more money, especially if you potentially have the resources and the intelligence, let's say, to do it, is kind of shame. It is almost like being shamed if you accept less. So if you have a university education, but then you decide to become a baker, or you decide to move into the mountains and walk your dog and make love to your wife, that's frowned upon and even looked down on. That like, why aren't you following our path? Why? Yeah.
And historically, that would have made sense in more of a, I want to say, a primal period of human existence. And if you're in a community and you have someone who's extremely good at making spears, and then they decide that they don't want to make spears anymore, and then you're like, dude, we got to eat, yo. Like, how are we going to catch these animals?
Please.
It's a problem, right?
Yeah. That's very funny. This guy's just like, nope.
I'm done, yo. Like,
I'm going swimming.
Yeah, I'm gonna go make love to my wife in the hills. But I think like in the modern world that we live in, it's not as much of a problem, right?
Yeah.
If someone that studied
It's maybe not so
accounting,
direct.
like we've got enough accountants. Like,
But if it's like an Elon Musk, for instance, and I know Elon Musk is a pretty controversial figure, but maybe he should go swimming and make love to his wife a bit more. But just saying, like, at least the way that Jordan Peterson describes it, which I think is maybe not 100% true, but it's like the people like Elon Musk who are insane, but also great minds who can come up with crazy ideas and actually make it happen, that might save humanity in the future. If those people were to say, I'm not going to do it, that might be a disappointment for the rest of humanity.
Yes and no. And this is a very interesting topic. So is it right, is it right for someone to give up who they are, their own peace, like finding their own journey, in order to create for the world? Now, one may argue, okay, if you take an extreme case of someone who's going to do like real good in the world.
I don't think so, by the way. I think
yeah. I think that if you had that case, then it's something that's impure. It's not aligned. You were talking the other day about the fractals and things sort of aligning. I think the best case is when you have, and there have been people in history who have created, and that is who they are. That was their journey. They found their purpose and they persevered on their purpose. So I think it's far better for if that person got a university degree. By the way, I'm extremely fortunate in that I, from a very young age, knew what my passion was. My grandfather was a blacksmith. My dad's an engineer. I'm an engineer. I love engineering. I work at a company that does some of the most advanced engineering in the world. So I was very lucky to find these things and have this alignment very early on. But for a lot of people, that's not the case. And I think it's so much more important to, despite what other people think, find that true balance, that why, that whatever resonates with you, and then find that alignment for the individual. And that means going off into the mountains and hiking or whatever. Then it's actually better for society in the long run than becoming an accountant and don't really want to be an accountant, right?
Yeah, the interesting thing, and I really like that about Carl Jung, he actually talks about that you have two halves in your life. It's not necessarily the half of your age, but the first half of life is where you try to master your body, the physical world, society, try to answer the needs that society has, so you actually have some substance to you. You can make waves in the world. You can do what you might think that society wants you to do. But then the second half is where you turn inward and you actually meditate, become quiet, and listen to what your soul really wants you to do. And that's maybe a bit what, so he's actually saying you cannot skip the first part. You need to actually have enough experiences and memories and literally experiences in the human world as a human before you can compare that to your inner world and reflect. But then in the end, the second part is the one where you really become who you are supposed to be, where your soul speaks to you and you can listen, and then, you know, maybe you'll change careers completely, or you stop working or whatever.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think to expect anyone to gain wisdom without making mistakes is naive. And so it can be frustrating, but also realizing that you're in a phase of your life where you're going to get things wrong and you're going to chase things for the wrong. But it's all to figure it out, and it's all to find that peace at a certain point in life. And for each individual, some people may never find it. Some people may find it at a very young age. Some people may be taught how to find it easily. And some people will find it somewhere in between. But having that faith, truly knowing that it is worth it. And like one of my friends is really big into, like, you know, trusting in the journey, which is so true. Like, that's what you got to do. You got to trust 100%. In the journey.
And you also have to maybe enjoy the journey in that sense, because like you said, someone might find it earlier or later, but I think no one is born with knowing their why and knowing their journey. And you are also, even if you find it, you will probably never be 100% sure, and it might even also change a bit. But like, imagine the scenario where you know your why from the start, you know exactly what to do, you know exactly what will happen.
It's boring.
What boring life would that be, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's not an existence worth living. Like, where's the fun and adventure in that?
And I'm thinking about the one quote or message that Jordan Peterson has, where he says, like, you can have anything that you want in your life in 5 years' time. You've just got to know what it is. Yeah. Right? And it's so true. Like, really, like, if you knew what it was and you set up a plan and you actually moved towards it, the first thing that would happen was that it would move. The goal would move. Like, as you start, if you dig deep and you find what you think is a true goal and you set it and you start moving towards it, one of the things that almost you can be certain of is that this goal will move. And that's sort of like that why. Like, as you start understanding it more, it'll move. But the closer you get, the less it moves. So over time, you eventually hone in and you get closer. And what we discussed in the last episode with conversations and people and connecting with others also helps you find your why. Because also as humans, we're all actually not that different, right? And that's where religion comes in. You know, for a very long time, people were like, okay, you know, for a lot of people, for most people, there's certain things that we do, which help us figure out our why and be fulfilled and happy and sense of community, and don't steal or kill each other or whatever it may be, right? There's certain things that we do, and we can learn far more from each other than what we think. Sometimes we live in this bit of this like rebellious culture, or like the counter movements of like, don't listen to what society has to say. And sometimes, yes, like when it comes to, I don't know, medications that are maybe unhealthy or whatever. But like, if we like go to the fundamentals, like you want to live with some sort of people around you, and you want to care about them and get along with them, and you want to respect them and respect yourself.
Yep.
All these basic principles,
Yeah, I agree. And that's actually also a very interesting point, because you have this, you have more of the conservative, and then you have more of the progressive people. So like society, it has its value, and we enjoy society and the structure and the peace that it brings. The other group might say, yes, but society is also oppressive and might try to keep you in this regimen, in this rat race, if you want. So we need to break free from it. I think lately that has also, or lately, like the past perhaps 100 years, it has also developed into something where this rat race is really, really real and advanced and has found its own life. And on the other side, you have the extreme progressives who even try to disconnect humans from being human. So even to say that, I mean, not to trigger too many people, but like to disconnect humans from their biology, right? So also a lot of things like men and women, what it means has been come to question, and also, well, the basic human needs that people have, being close to one another, going out into the nature, moving your body, all these things that, well, at least for hundreds of years have been known about the psychology of humans, are now being put to question in this transhuman idea that we can transcend our biology and become something like a computer or a robot, which is nonsense. We are not robots or computers. I mean, we work a lot with them, but we should not confuse us with the machine. We are something a bit more complex, a bit less efficient, a bit more irrational.
Yes. But that's part of our beauty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But we are the ones who also created this cycle that we're in, right? Which is so crazy to me, because there's so many of us who value our peace and nature and the fundamentals and what made us who we are. But then we literally work at a company who has enabled this technological revolution that will one day put a chip in maybe our kids' brains or something, right? It's like, it's fucked up.
We're there as well.
Like,
yeah, but I think, and that brings it back to what you said earlier. I think like the truthful pursuit of meaning is very key, because I think we have the capability to create technology, but what has happened is, I think, the untruthful or unaligned creation of technology, which creates technology that lives a life on its own and becomes self-referential and spins off and does something else. And that is what's taking over our lives.
Yes, and I think the consequences of unaligned creation, if we call it that, has minimized the more advanced our societies has become. So back in the day, if you created, I'm trying to use an example here, but maybe, I don't know, a spear for the wrong reason, right? Then like, it wouldn't only hurt the animal, but maybe the person who threw it. And like the consequences of creating something in an impure way or unaligned to oneself become a lot more evident. It shows itself in the world and environments more easily than it does the negative impacts.
It's more hidden now.
It's more hidden now.
Yeah.
So someone creates a website that you put your email in to sign up for something, but then it actually sells it to a company who can spam you with it. It seems, okay, harmless. But it's unaligned, right? That's just one. But then, there's 10 of these, and then things just, expand.
The atom bomb, right? Like, what really these kind of things is, and that's a bit crazy, because people are also saying, and I don't know the answer to that. You can say like the technology exists, we are just discovering it. So like the potential for this to work exists, we are just discovering it. So it's neutral, but it's not neutral. It is, I think, like the way that you have to be careful how you create things with which purpose in mind. And if you have no purpose in mind, someone will have a purpose for it.
Or how, in what state you are when you create. If you don't know what the purpose is, if your state is not pure, then you're not going to create something.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And then maybe I'm referencing something a bit more religiously toned, but I really love the symbolic interpretations from Jonathan Pajot. He has a YouTube channel, The Symbolic World, and he introduced me via his videos to this concept that in mythological stories, you often have these kind of hybrids between something divine and something earthly, and that if it is misaligned, that's when you create monsters like giants or cyclops, the Minotaur, so half bull, half man. These kind of monstrous creatures are a combination of like a divine piece and a bad intention, or not aligned intention.
And the divine would be the beauty and the technological solution, or analytical solution.
Technology.
And the beast would be the reason for it. Right.
Yeah, so technology, you can see it like angels or like the Greek gods, for instance, as principalities, so like things that exist, that have a force that maybe are not yet uncovered by humans or are partially uncovered. But once they merge with something material, so once they take really manifesting form in the material world with bad alignment, that's when you create monsters. So, and then one of the beautiful examples which you can connect to social media very well is a giant who has a huge body, so a huge reach and influence, but a very tiny brain. So actually no rational guidance of that huge body.
Yes.
It's not guided anywhere. It doesn't serve any purpose.
Yes.
It's just going around making big moves.
Yes.
And that's social media as well, as we talked offline before.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that analogy, and it just makes so much sense. And then you can also take money, like I said before, as the same thing. Money is the same. If it's unguided, or if you are being possessed by money, it can create monstrous things. But so it's all about how aligned is the technology or the idea.
How aligned do you think the creation of money was to the human psyche? And
that's very hard. I think it also develops probably over time, and maybe it can be misused and become more soiled over time.
I think it's evolved in a way that's become less aligned with what humans should stand for or are, because like when we originally created it, it was an actual thing that was linked, but now I mean money is just numbers.
Yes.
And it's just created, and like there's just like systems and stuff, right? It's not like pure anymore.
Do you know this page, like something like what happened in 1971? That's like web page. If you like what happened in 1971.com or something, and you see like that is the year where the dollar price got disconnected from the gold reserve, and like basically like then everything went to shit. Like all the inflation, housing market, blah blah blah. It's pretty funny. You can find a lot of graphs on that.
By the way, I think Donald Trump recently said he wants to go to Fort Knox to see if the gold's really there. Did you see it?
No, really?
Yeah, I saw online. He's like, I'm going to go there. He and Elon Musk, they want to go visit, and they were like, show us the gold.
Oh, that's extremely funny.
That's extremely funny. But indeed, no, I think that as people, we took the pure beauty in the idea of creating, and we became a bit too obsessed with creating that we forgot to stay truly aligned to ourselves and each other in the process of creating. So we created these concepts like money and these meta ideas, which created so much complexity. It allowed us to be tempted and veered off of our path as a society and as individuals. And it means that it's bloody difficult for us as individuals and as people to find the path back. And we're always going to be questioned by ourselves, towards ourselves, if we need to earn more, or if we need this or that or whatever. And that's the byproduct of what people have created, whether we like it or not.
Yeah,
and it's the battle we've got to fight.
It's a constant struggle.
Yeah,
and I think you cannot. If I was just thinking, like, is the life that we're living right now more complicated or more hard than 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago. I think probably every time has their own challenges. Probably our challenges are pretty different from the ones that we had 10,000 years ago when we were trying to fight mammoths and stuff like that.
At least for me, I think that right now is the best time that there has ever been for people. That doesn't mean that there's obviously no suffering. And I agree. I think that the types of challenges are very different. I think the impact of not being secure in who you are, knowing your values, knowing what you stand for, knowing your why, the negative impact of that is, I think, huge in today's society, especially with mental health and the epidemics or pandemics that's going around the world. Also linked to the pandemic of COVID, I think there was a lot of mental health issues that came from that. But on the bright side of it, I think that it's something that's solvable. And with this beautiful technology that we have and all this amazing content that we have online, I've learned so much about myself and about people and about things that we've discussed in this podcast through YouTube, through the internet, through people like Jordan Peterson, who I've mentioned many, many times, but all sorts of other Diary of the CEO podcasts and Andrew Huberman and whoever it may be, right? So I think that we literally live in a day and age where we can be in very bad shape because of how things have turned out historically and how things are working now. But within the state of months or years, we can completely flip our lives around and be so fruitful and so grateful and at peace and know who we are and influence each other and connected and loving and all these amazing things. And that's beautiful, right?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good also to take from these technologies that are out there and the capabilities that we have with AI and whatnot. So I think like we would like to maybe recapture the technologies that are out there and now floating around a bit unguided and using them for something guided for a higher purpose, and maybe even coming ourselves with new creations while we are aligned. So do you have maybe one piece of advice that you would have for people or for yourself or for me, what we can do or should do in order to align ourselves better with?
I just mentioned the man Jordan Peterson. I think one of the things that's been impactful for me recently is really focus on telling the truth to yourself, to people around you, to your colleagues, family, friends, and then being aligned and being pure in those small micro decisions that you do make, because every person that will watch this will have responsibilities. If I think about my responsibilities at work, there's always that moment where you can brush something off or you can take a shortcut or you could do whatever. But standing strong, being that thing, like knowing what you got to do and standing it. And in other words, starting at the individual level. You can't expect the world to change if you're not willing to at least push a little bit in the right direction and put that effort in, and watch it spread in a positive way to people around you.
Preach.
Yeah, and how about yourself? What would you say?
I think what I would say is be more quiet and let there be some silence for yourself to be heard. So listen to yourself, like more introspective, meditate, and literally like more quiet.
I think that's beautiful. I mentioned to you earlier today, I watched Diary of the CEO's episode with Joe Dispenza, who I'd never heard of before. An absolutely fascinating episode. And through his discussion with Stephen, he was mentioning just that. Starting with 10 minutes a day, just be by yourself, with yourself. Turn it into half an hour. But if we could spend an hour a day sitting just with ourselves, with our thoughts, learning how to be mindful, learning how to find peace. Like recently, I learned about the Wim Hof breathing method. To anyone watching, I think it's amazing. Something I've learned so much, but I wish that I was taught it at a much younger age. And I think that these sorts of things can bring us back into alignment, can bring us much peace, can influence us and each other very positively. Finding peace in being quiet for oneself, but also being quiet towards one another. I think a lot of the time, we have our own insecurities, we have our defense mechanisms, we want to fight, we want to project, we want to engage with the world. That's also driven or wired into us. But listening to people.
Yeah.
Really listening, not listening to also what they say, but how they say it and why they're saying it, and listening so that you can interact with people. We mentioned in the past that story that I told about how with great power comes great responsibility. You learn more about human nature, and you can use it for good and for bad. So listening to others, not only to hear them, but to learn more about human nature, and then listening to them also to be able to respond to them in a way that brings out the human in their human nature. It goes back to the connecting with each other, loving each other, and really caring about each other.
And maybe also the combined purifying of the truth by really listening and really speaking the truth, like you said, like being truthful.
And calling people out if you think that they're not helping you get towards the truth.
Yeah.
People won't like it. I've done it.
But if it's the truth, it's the truth.
It's the truth.
Yeah.
And ultimately, people will respect you for it. And you will respect yourself more for it, which
That's
is
maybe
actually
more
more
important,
important,
more
far
important.
more important. Yeah.
And maybe one more question to wrap it up. What would you advise people not to do? Like, are there any mistakes that you've made yourself?
Very good one. Don't let the ego distract you.
Ooh, yeah.
I'll leave it at that. Don't let the ego distract you.
Amen. I think that's a beautiful one.
Yeah.
I have nothing better than that.
Well, Tim, I think we have had a very interesting episode this evening.
The best one yet.
Yeah.
I think.
You're almost done with your fasting.
Yeah.
I've noticed.
A couple more days.
Yeah, last episode and this one, we've had some really engaging topics with the energy from you breaking your fast just before we record. And one of the things that we also discussed, or I mentioned, and I would like us to do in the future, is to do one of Wim Hof's breathing exercises before we record.
I'm thinking, wouldn't we just also record that maybe as well, and we can directly
indeed.
say
Yeah.
what we feel.
Yeah, for sure. I think we should actually do that. So maybe we open up the intro for 5 minutes, whatever, and then we do it. And then for our viewers, we could obviously fast forward through a lot of it.
Yeah.
It's just 10 minutes long, by the way. And then we have our discussion. And I think that would be a really interesting,
cool, right?
Yeah, really interesting
Let's
one.
see what it does.
We've also discussed the idea of bringing some guests onto the podcast. I think that'll be really interesting. And I think, once again, we're doing this aligned. We're just trying to find the truth between us, two friends. We're trying to share it with people because we can, and we have this awesome technology. So to anyone who's on this journey with us, engage. Tell us what you think. Make videos, reach out. If people want to come on and share their ideas.
Yeah, please let us know in the comments what you liked and what you didn't like.
Yeah.
And if there are any things we can improve, topics we can talk about.
Yeah.
Like, we are open to anything, I think.
For sure. This has been such a rewarding journey process. I've gotten so much more out of it than what I thought I would get out of it. I know you've gone through the process of making YouTube channels and learning through that, but I found myself thinking a lot more, thinking about deeper topics, being questioned, do the things that I'm doing or thinking about align. So for that, thank you. It's been great.
Thank you as well, man, because I really enjoy the discussions that we have, and just recording it, making sure that it's not forgotten, and then looking back into it later myself, it just gives me so much joy. So yeah. Thank you.
I agree. Awesome stuff. Then for that's a wrap. I'm going to do the clap so we sync at the end again.
Yes. Beautiful.
Perfect. Nice stuff.